The woman beside the bones. The desert wind howled across the empty land. Sand flew like sharp blades, stinging skin and eyes. Blake pulled his scarf tighter around his face. He had come to this barren planet looking for old tech, crashed ships, anything valuable. He had found nothing all morning, but now, something strange caught his eye. Lying near a cluster of dried bones was a figure, not moving, not dead, but close. Blake's boots crunched against the sand as he stepped closer. It was a woman. Alien. Her skin was pale blue, sunburned and peeling. Her body was thin, too thin. Her lips were cracked and her hands trembled. Flies buzzed around her and above her vultures circled. Blake's eyes narrowed. She was breathing. Barely. "Hey," he called out, kneeling beside her. "Can you hear me?" She didn't answer. Her eyes fluttered weakly, but she couldn't speak. Blake reached for his canteen. He gently lifted her head and held the water to her lips. She drank. Slowly. Carefully. Like she hadn't had water in days, there was a mark on her arm, burned into her skin. A cruel word written in a language Blake didn't fully understand. But he knew enough to read it. Reject. Someone had done this to her. Branded her like trash, left her here to die. He looked around. There were other bones nearby. Old, dry. She had been left among the dead. Blake felt his chest tighten. No bag. No tools. No weapon. Nothing. Just her. He could leave. He didn't know her. Didn't owe her anything. But as he looked into her eyes, that still held a little spark of life. He couldn't turn away. Blake wrapped her in his travel blanket and lifted her gently into his arms. She was light. Too light. As he walked back to his rover, he glanced at the sky. The vultures were still circling. Blake's shelter wasn't much. Just a small outpost with solar panels, a bed, and a basic med kit. He laid her on the bed and checked her pulse. Weak, but there. He gave her food paste, but she couldn't eat yet. Just water. He cleaned her wounds with care. Some were deep, some were old. Whoever had hurt her had done it many times. That night, she slept with a fever. She moaned in her sleep, speaking words Blake didn't know. Her voice shook. Her fingers clawed the air like she was trying to escape something. He sat beside her, wiping her forehead. "You're safe now," he whispered. "Whoever did this to you, they won't touch you again." The next morning, she woke up. Her eyes opened slowly. She looked around, confused, scared. When she saw Blake, she tried to sit up, but she winced. In pain. "It's okay," he said, raising his hands to show peace. "You're safe." She didn't understand his words, but something in his voice made her pause. He offered her a cup of warm soup. She took it, shaking. As she drank, Blake sat across from her. He tried to ask her name. She didn't speak, just lowered her eyes. He pointed to himself. "Blake," he said. She looked up, then pointed at him. "Blake," she whispered. Blake smiled. "Yes, Blake." She didn't say anything else, but she nodded. That was something. Later that day, Blake stepped outside to check his radio for any signals. He had no idea where she came from. Maybe a nearby colony, maybe a crashed ship. As he adjusted the signal, a faint message came through. He barely caught the words. Escaped. Female asset. Valuable. If seen. Report immediately. He froze. Was it about her? He walked back inside and saw her sitting up, weak but alert. She was staring at her hands like they didn't belong to her. Blake noticed something else now. Her wrists. Faint scars from shackles. She hadn't just been left in the desert. She had been thrown away, used, hurt, thrown out like garbage. His fists clenched. He sat beside her again. She looked at him, then gently reached out and touched his scarf. Her fingers trembled. She held onto the edge of the fabric like it gave her comfort. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her eyes said enough. She was afraid, alone, and tired of being hurt. Blake sighed. I don't know who you are, but I'm not letting you die here. That night, as the wind howled again outside, the woman lay on the bed wrapped in his blanket. Blake sat nearby, rifle in hand, eyes on the door. Something told him danger was coming, and whoever had left her for dead might want her back. But now, she wasn't alone. The shelter was quiet. Only the soft hum of the solar generator could be heard outside. Inside, Blake sat near the door, cleaning his old rifle. His eyes kept glancing at the bed. The alien woman lay still. Her body had stopped shaking, but she hadn't said a word since yesterday. Not even a whisper. She had eaten a little soup, drunk some water, but mostly, she stared at the wall, lost somewhere far away. Blake didn't know what to say to her. He wasn't good with words. He was just a scavenger, but something about her, something in her silence pulled at him. That night he heard her whisper for the first time. At first it was just a soft sound, like wind passing through dry leaves. But as he stepped closer, he realized she was talking, in her sleep. Her voice trembled. Her words were fast, broken, and full of fear. Then she cried out. A single sharp word that made Blake freeze. No. She woke, gasping. Her eyes were wide with terror. She looked around, confused, shaking. Blake raised his hands. It's okay, he said softly. You're safe. No one's going to hurt you. But she didn't hear him. Her hands covered her face. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Blake stepped back. He didn't want to scare her more. He just stood there and waited. Finally, she looked up. Her face was wet with tears. She pointed at her arm, the place where the reject brand was, burned into her skin. Then she pointed at her chest. And then she pointed up to the stars. Blake understood. They did this to her. Her own people. The next morning, Blake found her standing near the mirror in the bathroom. She stared at herself like she didn't recognize the reflection. Her face was thinner than it should be. Her eyes were sunken. Scars ran across her back, her arms, even her neck. She touched her face slowly. Then she turned and looked at Blake. For the first time, he saw something different in her eyes. Anger. Not at him, but at whoever had broken her. She stepped closer and pointed at herself. Lean, she said, voice quiet. Blake blinked. Lean, he repeated. She nodded. Finally, he had a name. Lean, he said again, trying to pronounce it right. Her lips curled into something close to a smile, but it didn't last long. A beeping sound came from his comms device. Blake walked over and checked it. His blood went cold. A bounty alert, galactic-wide. A blurry photo appeared on the screen. It was her. Weak and pale, but clearly her. Fugitive, alive or dead. Reward offered. He looked back at Zaylin. She was staring at the screen. She understood. Her face turned white. She stepped back, shaking her head. It's okay, Blake said. I'm not turning you in. But she didn't believe him. She turned and rushed for the door. Wait, he shouted. She pushed the door open and ran outside into the rocky canyon. Blake cursed and grabbed his gear. The sun was low in the sky. Shadows stretched long across the sand. Blake followed her footprints. She was fast, even injured. But he had been across these lands many times. He knew the way she'd go. He found her near an old cave, sitting behind a rock, hugging her knees. Zaylin, he said softly. She didn't move. He stepped closer. You're not safe out here. Bounty hunters might be looking. Still, no answer. Then she whispered, Why? Blake tilted his head. Why what? She looked at him, eyes filled with confusion and pain. Why, help me? Blake sat down beside her. The air was dry and quiet. He took a breath. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Maybe because you didn't deserve this. Maybe because no one else did." She stared at him. Her lip trembled. "They said, I am worthless." Blake looked her in the eye. "They lied." She shook her head. "Family said, I bring shame. They sold me, then left me." Her voice broke. "No name, no home." Blake reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small necklace. Just a stone tied to a string. "I found this long ago, worth nothing. But I kept it." He placed it in her hand. "You have a name now. You have a place." She clutched the necklace. Her eyes filled with tears. That night, they returned to the shelter. Zaylin didn't scream this time. She slept more peacefully. And Blake? He sat at the table, staring at the bounty alert on the screen. He knew someone would come, soon, but he also knew one thing. If anyone tried to take her again, they'd have to go through him first. The sun rose slowly over the dusty hills, casting golden light across the rocks. Inside the small shelter, Blake sat at the edge of his bed, watching Zaylin sleep. Her breathing was calm now. No nightmares. No whispers in the dark. But he couldn't relax. The bounty alert from last night was still fresh in his mind. Her face, the reward, the word fugitive printed in bold red. Someone wanted her badly. He knew what that meant. They would come. Zaylin woke slowly. Her eyes opened to see Blake preparing food. He smiled. "Morning." She nodded, then rubbed her arms. She still looked tired, but stronger than before. Blake placed a warm bowl of soup in front of her. She hesitated, then took a small sip. As she ate, Blake tried to keep his voice calm. "Zaylin, do you know why they're hunting you?" She paused, spoon halfway to her mouth. Slowly, she nodded. "They want to take you back?" he asked. She looked down. "Not take. Kill." Blake's heart sank. "Why?" Her hands shook. "I refused them. They called me broken, a shame. I ran. I hid. They want silence." Blake clenched his jaw. "But you don't deserve that." She looked up, eyes wide. "No one ever said that to me before." Before he could speak again, the shelter's alert system beeped. A motion sensor had been triggered outside. Blake rushed to the monitor. A small drone hovered in the sky, scanning the area. He quickly grabbed a cloth and covered the windows. "We need to hide." Zaylin stood, clutching her bowl tightly. "Is it them?" Blake nodded. "A scout drone means someone's close." He handed her a small bag. "Pack food, water, anything light. We're leaving." Within minutes, they were outside, moving quickly through the rocks behind the shelter. Blake had a hidden path he used when things went bad. The drone didn't follow them. Not yet. But Blake knew that would change. By afternoon, they had reached a small canyon. Steep cliffs, tight paths, perfect for hiding. They set up camp in a shadowed corner behind tall stones. Zaylin sat with her knees tucked under her, holding the necklace Blake had given her. "I don't want to run forever," she said quietly. Blake looked at her. "Then we fight." She turned. "How? You are one. I am nothing." He smiled, tired but sure. "You're not nothing. And I've beaten worse odds before." She shook her head, not in disbelief but in fear. Then a sound echoed through the canyon. Engines. A ship was landing. Blake peeked through the rocks. 3 bounty hunters stepped out. Tall, armored, armed. One of them had a scanner. It beeped as he pointed it toward the rocks. "She's close." Blake turned to Zaylin. "We don't have time. You stay hidden. I'll draw them away." She grabbed his arm. "No, they will kill you." He smiled. "They'll try." Before she could stop him, he slipped through the rocks and moved behind the hunters. Blake tossed a rock far across the canyon. It hit with a loud clang. One of the hunters turned. "Over there!" They moved toward the sound, weapons ready. Blake used the moment to rush behind them and tackle the one with the scanner. They rolled in the dirt, fists flying. The other two turned and fired. Blake dodged behind a boulder. A blast struck the edge, sending sharp pieces flying into his arm. He grunted in pain, but he didn't stop. Xiaolin, watching from above, could see it all. She saw Blake fighting for her, bleeding for her, and suddenly she remembered something, an old story from her homeworld, of a human who protected a helpless alien girl. No one believed it was true, but now she was seeing it with her own eyes. She stood up. She stepped forward. One of the hunters raised his weapon to shoot Blake in the back. A stone flew through the air hard and fast. It hit the hunter in the head. He stumbled. Blake turned in time to duck the shot and punch him in the gut. Then he saw her, Xiaolin, standing tall on the rocks above. She wasn't running anymore. The final hunter saw her and aimed. Blake shouted, "No!" He jumped in front of her just as the weapon fired. The blast hit him in the shoulder. He dropped to his knees. Xiaolin screamed. The canyon echoed with her voice, loud and fierce. The hunters froze, and then without warning she rushed forward, picked up the fallen weapon, and fired. The last hunter dropped. Silence. Blake coughed. "You okay?" Xiaolin dropped beside him. "You were shot." He smiled, weak but alive. Still breathing. She held his hand tightly. "You saved me." "You saved me too," he whispered. That night, in the canyon's safety, Xiaolin cleaned his wound. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was learning to stand, and though she was still marked on the outside, Blake had already seen who she truly was inside. Not a fugitive, not broken, but someone worth saving. The wind in the canyon blew strong that morning, carrying dust and whispers from the night before. Xiaolin sat beside the fire, holding Blake's jacket tight around her shoulders. The smell of smoke and burned metal still clung to the air. Blake's shoulder was bandaged, but the injury had left him pale and weak. He leaned against the canyon wall, breathing slow, trying not to show pain. "You need rest," Xiaolin said softly. "I'll rest when we're safe," Blake replied, managing a small smile. She shook her head. "You always say that." He looked at her. "And you never used to talk this much." Xiaolin actually smiled, a rare, gentle curve of her lips. Then her face turned serious again. "More hunters will come." "I know," Blake answered. "That's why we need a plan." Hours passed. The canyon was quiet, but they both knew it wouldn't last. Xiaolin walked through the narrow paths, her sharp eyes studying every stone, every shadow. She remembered the weapons the hunters had carried. 2 had fallen into the rocks below. Still working. Still dangerous. She climbed down carefully and retrieved one. A pulse rifle, heavy but familiar. She had used one like it in her training years ago, before everything went wrong. She returned to Blake with the weapon and dropped it beside him. "You'll need this." He raised an eyebrow. "You sure you don't want it?" "I already have mine," she said, holding up the smaller sidearm she'd taken earlier. Blake chuckled. "Now you're starting to scare me." "Good," she said. "Scared men live longer." As the sun set, Blake pulled out a small sensor. It blinked once, then again. "Incoming ship," he said. Xiaolin stood. "How many?" "Can't tell, but close, very close." Blake winced as he got to his feet. "We're not going to outrun them this time." Xiaolin looked at the narrow path above them. "Then we trap them." He looked at her. "Trap them?" She nodded. "This canyon, it's tight. If we control the entrance, they can't surround us. If we fight smart, we win." Blake stared at her, impressed. "You sure you're not a soldier?" "I was supposed to be a wife," she said coldly. "But I learned how to survive." Night fell fast. Xiaolin set traps, tripwires, hidden rocks ready to fall, even energy mines taken from the bounty hunters' packs. Blake covered the high ledge with his rifle. Xiaolin hid behind boulders near the canyon mouth. And then, the ship arrived. The quiet hum of its engines echoed like thunder through the cliffs. Lights cut through the night. Then figures stepped out. 5 this time. Better gear. Smarter moves. One of them, a tall alien with gold armor, raised a scanner. "She's here," he growled. "I smell her." The others spread out. Zaylin waited. Her hand clenched around the grip of her weapon. She could hear her heart pounding. Not in fear, but in focus. "This is my home now," she thought, "and I will not be taken again." The first bounty hunter stepped on the tripwire. Boom! A blast threw him backward, slamming into the canyon wall. The others shouted and raised weapons. Blake fired from above, hitting one in the chest. Another ducked behind a rock and fired back. Zaylin moved quickly. She darted from one cover to another, firing short bursts. One more enemy fell, but then the gold-armored one saw her. He moved fast, faster than the others. He lunged forward and tackled her hard to the ground. Her weapon flew from her hands. He grabbed her by the throat. "You were promised to a royal house. You belong to them." Zaylin gasped for air, struggling. "I belong to no one." She kicked him in the chest and rolled free. He swung his blade at her. She grabbed a nearby rock and smashed it into his helmet, cracking the visor. He roared in pain. Then a shot echoed. Blake's rifle. The gold-armored hunter collapsed. Zaylin stumbled back, breathing hard. When the dust cleared, only silence remained. The 5 hunters lay on the canyon floor, wounded or dead. Zaylin limped over to Blake. He was leaning against the wall again, blood on his shirt, rifle in hand. "You all right?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "You?" She held out her hands. Still standing, he grinned. "That's what matters." Later, they sat by the fire again. Zaylin looked at her reflection in a shiny piece of metal, dirt on her face, cuts, blood, but her eyes looked different now, alive, strong, free. Blake looked at her from across the flames. "You saved both of us." She met his eyes. "You gave me something to fight for." "What's that?" She reached into her shirt and pulled out the stone necklace. "This..." Blake's voice softened. "That's just a rock." "No," she whispered. "It's a promise that I'm not alone anymore." Outside, the stars shone bright. The sky was peaceful, for now. But Blake knew the fight wasn't over. Zaylin had been hunted, beaten, and thrown away. But now she had teeth. And if anyone came for her again, they'd regret it. Because she wasn't the same woman beside the bones anymore. Now, she was fire. The canyon was quiet again, but the silence now felt different. It wasn't fear anymore. It was calm. A stillness after the storm. Zaylin stood at the edge of the ledge, watching the stars. Her face was bruised, her hands scraped, but her back was straight. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like prey. Blake sat inside the shelter, fixing the comm device. His shoulder hurt, but he kept working. He was trying to boost the signal, not to call for help, but to find answers. They needed to know who else was looking for her, and why. The scanner blinked to life. A secured message flashed on the screen. Blake tapped it open. His eyes narrowed. Zaylin walked in, as Blake stared at the screen. She tilted her head. "What is it?" Blake looked up slowly. "I found something." She stepped closer. "What?" He turned the screen to her. A hologram of a news file flickered on. A picture appeared. A younger version of Zaylin, dressed in royal robes, surrounded by guards. She gasped. Then words appeared below her image. Zaylin Verith, daughter of the counselor, missing. She stared at the screen. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. "That's you, isn't it?" Blake asked gently. She nodded. Slowly. Blake leaned back. "You're not just anyone. You're from a royal family." Zaylin swallowed hard. Was. He waited for her to speak. She finally did. "I was born in House Verith, high status, wealth. I was meant to marry the son of another counselor, to make peace between our houses." Blake frowned. But you ran? She nodded. He was cruel. He hurt others, I said no. And they punished you for it. They erased me, called me broken, marked me. She touched the scar on her arm. They took my name, my home, my freedom. They sold me, like garbage. Blake's fists clenched. You still have your name, he said. No one can take that. She looked at him with wide, tearful eyes. You speak as if it matters. It does, he said. It matters to me. Later that evening, Blake lit a small fire outside the shelter. Zaylene sat beside him, wrapped in his jacket again. I never wanted power, she whispered. Only a quiet life. A real one. You could still have it, Blake said. They'll keep coming, but we could disappear. New planet. New identity. She turned to him. Would you come with me? Blake blinked. You want me there? Zaylene nodded. You are the only one who ever saw me, not as a tool or a problem, but as a person. He smiled. Then we go together. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, an old chip she had taken from one of the hunters. Blake scanned it, his eyes widened. Coordinates, safe zones, money accounts, names of corrupt council members. It was everything. This could destroy them, he whispered. I know, she said. Blake looked at her. You want revenge? She shook her head. I want freedom, for me, for others like me. Blake stood and looked at the stars. Then we use this. The next day they traveled by foot to an old comm tower Blake knew, hidden in the mountains. It was abandoned but powerful. Perfect for a broadcast. Zaylene uploaded the chip. A signal went out. To the Galactic Council. To the people. To the rebels. To the victims. The truth was no longer hidden. Hours later, messages came flooding in. Some offered help. Some offered warnings. But the one that stood out was simple. Zaylene Verith, your voice is heard. She read it again and again. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She turned to Blake. For years I had no name. No one said it with kindness. He touched her shoulder. Now the whole galaxy knows it. That night, as they returned to the canyon, Zaylene looked around. She no longer saw a place of hiding. She saw the spot where she stood tall, where she fought back, where she reclaimed herself. Her name was not something to fear. It was her shield, her blade, her truth. Inside the shelter, she looked at the cracked mirror again. She wasn't the same woman who lay beside Bones. She wasn't the tool of a cruel family. She wasn't a fugitive hiding in the dark. She was Zaylene Verith, a daughter who chose her own path, a woman who fought for her freedom, and, beside her, was the human who gave her the strength to believe she mattered. The canyon winds were strangely still. The stars above shimmered like silent witnesses, and inside the small shelter, tension thickened the air. Blake stared at the alert flashing on his screen. A private ship had entered the zone. No ID, no signal. Silent, fast, and heading straight for them. Zaylene stood nearby, silent but alert. Blake looked up. This isn't bounty hunters, Zaylene nodded. No, it's worse. She walked to the window and looked out. In the dark distance, soft blue lights blinked as the ship descended like a beast landing in the night. My family, she whispered. They've come. Minutes later, the sleek black ship settled near the canyon. A ramp extended slowly. From the smoke and dust emerged 6 guards in shimmering armor, tall, cold, disciplined, and behind them, a man, sharp-eyed, tall. His robes were fine silk. His face was hard. Counselor Verith, Zaylene's father. Blake stepped beside her. We run? She shook her head. No more running. Are you sure? She turned, her voice steady. They took my name. My freedom. If I run again, I lose it all. Blake nodded slowly. Then I stand with you. Counselor Verith and his guards reached the canyon floor. He stopped a few feet from her, staring with disgust and something else. Disappointment. You look like a stray animal, he said coldly. Zaylin didn't flinch. I lived like one thanks to you. He stepped closer. You were given a future, a powerful union, a place beside kings. I was given chains, she replied. You sold me when I said no. Vareth's eyes narrowed. You are not here to talk. You are here to return. Silently. Now. Blake stepped forward. She's not going anywhere. The guards raised their weapons. Zaylin raised her hand. Enough. Her voice echoed through the canyon. I am not your property, she said. Not your daughter. Not your shame. I am Zaylin Vareth and I claim my life. Vareth's face twisted with rage. You will regret this. She pulled out a small device and pressed it. From a high cliff, a signal flared into the sky. A beacon Blake had helped her plant. Vareth blinked. What did you do? Zaylin's voice was calm. I invited guests. Moments later, the sound of engines filled the sky again. But this time it wasn't a threat. 4 patrol ships appeared. Galactic Watch. The same council that once ignored her had now come. Because she had the evidence. Because her story had spread. Blake stepped beside her as the patrols landed. Officers emerged. Calm, armed, and listening. Zaylin handed them the data chip. This contains proof of everything. Illegal sales, abuse, family corruption. One officer turned to Vareth. Counselor Vareth, you are under arrest. The man's mouth opened, stunned. You believe her? Over me? Zaylin stepped forward. I don't care what you believe. She looked him in the eye. I just want you to know, I'm not afraid of you anymore. Vareth lunged, but the officers moved faster. He was shackled and taken away. The canyon felt different now. Lighter. Zaylin sat quietly, breathing deep. Blake brought her water. You did it. She shook her head. We did. They sat under, the stars again. No alarms, no fear, just peace. I never thought I'd see this day, she whispered. Blake smiled. You earned it. She turned to him. You gave me strength. You gave yourself strength, he said softly. I just stood beside you. Her eyes sparkled. For the first time I feel real. Not a title, not a prisoner, just me. He reached into his bag and pulled something out. Her old necklace, it was still cracked. Still rough, but to her, it was beautiful. She held it to her chest. Thank you. Blake stood. So, what now? She stood beside him. Now, I live. She looked out into the distance, not in fear, not in hiding, but free. Later that night, as the fire crackled gently, Zaylin whispered into the night. I am Zaylin Vareth. She closed her eyes, and I am no longer silent. The morning sun rose slowly over the canyon cliffs. Warm light touched the rocky walls where pain and fear had once lived. But today, it felt different. Brighter, softer, like the beginning of something new. Zaylin stood at the edge of the ledge, a soft breeze brushing against her skin. No chains, no hunters, no orders barked at her. Just wind and freedom. Behind her, Blake packed the last of their supplies. The Galactic Council had offered her protection, even transport to any safe planet she chose. But she had refused the royal shuttle. She didn't want a throne. She wanted peace. She turned to Blake. Are you ready? He nodded. More than ever. They had chosen a quiet planet across the stars, a place with forests, rivers, and no wanted posters, no past. Just a future. Together. As the two walked through the canyon one last time, Zaylin paused at the place where she had once lain near old bones. She crouched down and gently placed a stone on the ground, not to mark death, but to mark survival. Blake watched in silence. I was left here to die, she whispered, but this is where I lived again. She stood slowly, brushing her hands. Blake reached out. Let's go. Time to write the next chapter. The small transport ship waited for them outside the canyon. It wasn't fancy, but it could fly. Blake sat at the controls. Zaylin looked out the window, her fingers resting on the old necklace he had given her. As they lifted off the ground, she stared at the desert shrinking below. I used to dream of flying away, she said, but it always felt too far. Blake smiled. Funny thing about dreams, sometimes you need someone else to believe in them first. She turned to him. Thank you for believing in me. I never saw a reject, he said. I saw someone who refused to give up. Days later, the ship entered orbit above their chosen planet. Lush green stretched across the land below. No cities, just nature, quiet and beautiful. Zaylin looked out, eyes wide with wonder. It's more beautiful than I imagined. Blake chuckled. You said you wanted trees. We've got trees. They landed on a soft grassy hill. Birds flew overhead. A small river shimmered nearby. It was perfect. Zaylin stepped out and took a deep breath. The air was clean, fresh. I feel... She paused. Clean. Inside. Blake set down their supplies. We can build here. A small home. Our way. She walked barefoot on the grass, laughing quietly. No walls, no cages. Just sky. He smiled at her. You really are something else, Zaylin. She turned to him. That name. I hated it for a long time. But it's yours, he said. Yes. She nodded. And now, I give it meaning. As the sun began to set, Blake lit a fire under the stars. Zaylin sat beside him, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes full of peace. I never told you this, she said softly. But when I was taken, I stopped believing anyone would ever care. Blake turned to her. I thought I was invisible. Or worse. I thought I deserved it. His voice was gentle. You never deserved what they did to you. She looked down at the fire. I used to sing myself to sleep in the cages, just to feel like I still existed. Blake didn't speak. He just listened. And then you came, she whispered. She looked into his eyes. You gave me water when I had nothing. You let me cry without shame. You fought for me when I had no strength. Blake reached over and held her hand. You saved me, she said. Not with weapons, with kindness. A tear rolled down her cheek. I want to be that for someone one day. I want to save someone, like you saved me. You already have, Blake said. You saved me too. She looked surprised. I was alone too, he said. Out there digging through scraps, living day to day, I had no reason to care anymore. He squeezed her hand. Then I found you. The stars blinked overhead. The fire crackled. Two hearts, sat close, no longer broken. Just healing. Together. Zaylin leaned her head on his shoulder. So what now? Blake smiled. We build. We plant things. We find peace. She closed her eyes. And if someone comes? He held her close. Then we face it, side by side. Weeks passed. They built a small home with wood and stone. Simple. Strong. Like them. Zaylin planted flowers outside, bright colors she had never seen before. Blake made her laugh every evening. Her nightmares faded. Her smile stayed longer, and one day a small orphan girl wandered into their land, lost, scared, hungry. Zaylin saw herself in the child. She gave her food. A blanket. A warm hug. The child looked up at her with wide, trusting eyes. And Zaylin smiled. I'll keep you safe, she said. She had been the forgotten now. She was someone's salvation.